You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, fellow patriots. Get ready for an hour of unabashedly pro-American, pro-conservative, and pro-biblical principles. This is the Blake Johnson Program.
Well, hello, America. Welcome to it. This is the Blake Johnson Program on the Lanterns Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us today. Lanterns.buzz is the website to go if you want to check out any of our content, whether it be news stories or any of our other radio programs we have. Be sure to do that at lanterns.buzz. Hope you've enjoyed the weekend. Hope you've enjoyed the past couple of weeks. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done a regular show, so I wasn't here for Memorial Day, but I am here now, and I just don't even know how to pack all of the things I want to talk about into 1 hour show, but we're going to do it. And I want to start off by talking about a couple of things related to one overall idea, and that is this. Words matter. Words matter. Now, why do you ask? Why do you ask? Do words matter? Why is this important? Why are we talking about this? Well, apparently we don't seem to understand that message. But we also don't understand freedom. We don't understand the concept of free speech. We don't even know what the First Amendment even means. We claim to know what it means, but we don't even know what it means. So let's start here. I've been chomping at the bit to get to this. Let's start with Roseanne, then Samantha Bee, then Joy Reid, Keith Olbermann, Bill Maher. What do all these people have in common? What they all have in common is they are all saying detestable things. But what they also have in common is people from different tribes are getting together to either denounce them, call for them to be fired. Well, in one of these people actually probably should be fired, at least one of these people. But in some of these cases, it's, well, do you agree with this person or not? And if you don't agree with this person, then they should be shut down. We are a culture that is obsessed with tribalism. We are obsessed with groupthink. It just depends on which group you're on. But let's try to be responsible adults here and approach these topics like reasonable people should. Can we get back to that? So let's start here. Let's start with Roseanne. So Roseanne, I think this is a fairly easy one. Roseanne, the other day, about a week ago actually, her show, self-titled Roseanne, got canceled because of a tweet that she sent out over a week ago in which she compared Valerie Jarrett, who was a former member of the Obama administration. She compared her to an ape. She said that if the Muslim Brotherhood and the Planet of the Apes got together and had a kid, it would be Valerie Jarrett. The left, understandably so, lost their minds. The right, many of which, understandably so, also were really upset by this, and they agreed with the decision by ABC to terminate the show for a second season. Now, the show, mind you, has been raking in millions of viewers and millions of dollars. So this hurt. And keep in mind that the people who are working on the show have also lost their jobs or have had to go find work elsewhere, maybe on the same network. But this has hurt a lot of people. Now, some are saying that the Roseanne situation, this violates her free speech to be able to get fired like this for saying something that, yes, while it was despicable, still, you're going to fire her for something like that? Yeah, I think you are. This has nothing to do with free speech. Nothing. Nothing at all. because the government isn't going after Roseanne. They're not trying to put her in prison for saying something like that. If they were doing that, then yes, I would be sounding the alarm saying that this is a violation of the U.S. Constitution. She should not be put in prison for saying something that, yes, is racist. Do I think that Roseanne is racist? Not necessarily, because I don't know her. And that's the other problem that we have. We are so quick and so willing to just throw out labels like racism on people that we don't even know. And we are so quick to say racist the moment you say anything about someone's color. Now, you might think, well, duh, that means it's racist. Well, no. Racism means an inherent and deep-seated hatred for someone based purely on their race. So you can criticize someone all you want, but that doesn't make you a racist. You can criticize President Obama all you want, but that doesn't make you a racist. It's based on policy, not based purely on his skin color. So this has nothing to do with free speech, and I don't believe that Roseanne is a racist because I don't know. I don't know her. Now, I do think she's crazy. I do think she has some serious mental issues. I mean, she has compared people who eat at Chick-fil-A. She said that they should be, killed, or they should be, basically persecuted at least. But she said some very degrading, awful things about Christians, about conservatives. She ran for president in the Green Party, ladies and gentlemen. She is not a conservative. And going back to this whole notion of tribalism, when Roseanne first launched, when it came back for the relaunch of that series, conservatives, many of which, were praising Roseanne because she said some friendly things about Donald Trump. And many of them at least wanted Roseanne to be on our side. But she's not on our side. Just because you say something nice about an individual does not make the person who says that nice thing the same as you. Another example, Kanye West. Just because Kanye West said a few nice things about Candace Owens and about Donald Trump does not make Kanye West a conservative, because he is not a conservative, and neither is Kim Kardashian, his wife. So can we please clear the air? Can we please do away with this notion that just because someone flirts with your side doesn't mean they actually are on your side? I like Bill Maher. Bill Maher has said some nice things. He said some things that I agree with when it comes to Islam, when it comes to political correctness, that I have agreed with. But that doesn't mean I think that Bill Maher is a conservative. He is not. He is one of the very few liberals who actually has an open mind and isn't completely blinded by his own bias. I like that. I celebrate that. But I can see the distinction. Many don't, and don't want to. Because we are so hungry for a celebrity of any kind to be on our side. We are so hungry for a celebrity to agree with us and be on our side, because we see that the left has almost everybody in Hollywood on their side. We see that the left is so popular. It's like when you're in school and you're the kid that's always getting bullied. You're the kid that's always getting rejected. So the moment when somebody who is mildly popular says something nice about you, you perk up, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my whole day is made. But if you're depending on people to satisfy your happiness, you're constantly going to be let down. This is one of the most basic, fundamental truths of society. You cannot depend on another human being for fulfillment. And as a Christian, you should know this. As a Christian, I should know this. And I should constantly be reminded of that. But it's easy. It's easy to forget because we like getting attention. We like people saying nice things about us. We don't want to be, labeled a racist or a homophobe or a hater or you name it. We don't want to be labeled that way. But we have to remember that some of the most morally upright people were those who were slandered, were those who were persecuted, and some of which were killed. I mean, best example of that is Jesus Christ, right? So we have to go back to that fundamental truth. We have to understand that. Now, let's go to Samantha Bee. Samantha Bee, I didn't know anything about this person until she was on the Glenn Beck show, because Glenn Beck apparently made friends with her and talked to her for a while back and brought her on, I think, the radio show, and then did the TV show with her and made her out to be someone who could possibly, be headed in the right direction morally, or maybe they just need to figure some things out. That's the only reason I know about her. I had no idea who she was, and I have not heard anybody else say anything about her show. Oh, have you watched this show? Oh, I love this show. Even liberals. I have liberal friends, and I've never heard them say anything about Samantha Bee. So, just to throw that out there. But the hypocrisy, the double standard is just so mind-boggling. So, Samantha, well, I guess I should say mind-numbing. It's mind-numbing. It's not a surprise. It's just painful. So she gets on her show, and she goes after Ivanka Trump. Ivanka Trump, over Memorial Day weekend, posted a photo of her and her son, and, just enjoying the weekend. And Samantha Bee thinks that it's a great idea to attack her for that, and saying, how could you dare be thankful for your family when your father, the President of the United States, is separating illegals from their kids, from their parents from the kids, and their kids from the parents? They're separating families. They're doing all these terrible things. How could you possibly sit there and enjoy time with your family? And then she called Ivanka an expletive, the C word, that is pretty gross. But I guess because she's a woman, she can call her that, and the left doesn't seem to care. They don't care at all. Now, they did care. Very much so. When Roseanne used a racist description. But they don't care when a woman uses a word that degrades women. These so-called feminists who seem to care so much about women empowerment, about the furtherance of women's rights, and we have to be equal. They have to be equal, and women are no different than men. They can do the exact same things as men. But then you're going to start using terms like that to degrade women? You are a hypocrite. You are a hypocrite, and you're the scum of the earth, quite frankly, because not only are you saying those nasty things about someone who hasn't even done anything. What's Ivanka Trump even done? I think she's still a registered Democrat. So that's not to say that she necessarily agrees with all the president's policies anyway. Man, what can she do? She's not the president. Well, I know what she could do. According to Samantha Bee, she could get dressed up in a real tight dress and go meet the president, and based on her implications, she can just go and sleep with the president and sleep with her own father and get him to do what she wants him to do. How sick and hypocritical can you be? Now, should she be fired? Well, the interesting thing about this is, unlike Roseanne, who tweeted something out and it was all her, Samantha Bee, this was taped. So that means, and this was all scripted, so she wasn't the only one to say this, to put this out there. The writers, the editors, the directors, the executives, they all knew what was going to be said in advance of this showing. Again, it's not a live show. It's once a week. It's taped. So they knew this was going to happen. So if heads are going to roll, it can't just be Samantha Bee's. Now, should heads roll here? This is where I get uncomfortable. As someone who, first of all, I don't even watch the show, so why do I care? If you want to say that stuff, whatever. I'm not going to watch it. And most people aren't going to watch it. It's not even a hit show. But do I think the government should get involved? No. I don't think the government should get involved. I do think they shouldn't have hired her in the first place. I do think that Time Warner They shouldn't have hired Samantha Bee in the first place. But if that's the shtick they want to do, if they want someone on there who's going to be really offensive and just go after Trump day in and day out, or week in and week out, I suppose in this case, well, that's up to them. It's a free market decision. I get uncomfortable with these firings. I really do. I mean, mostly because when it relates to the company, and it relates to something that they want to do. First of all, Roseanne, the network, ABC, they claim to be a network that wants to have, morally sound values. And by that, I don't mean Christian values. I mean, postmodern thinking. They don't want absolute truth, but they want their absolute truth, which doesn't even work. So, if it's up to them. If they feel like this violates one of their principles, then fine. Time Warner, apparently this doesn't violate their principles because that's what they got into in the first place, and this isn't the first time that Samantha Bee has said something this offensive anyway. Now, we're going to take a break, come back. There's some other things about this I want to say because, by the way, when we're talking about hypocrisy from those who are, from the left, it's not just the left that is hypocritical. It's the right as well. And some of you may not like this, but this is the truth. And the truth will be spoken on this show, and we will do that right after this break. Stay tuned. I kind of want to get back into this point that I was making before the break. This notion of, firing people based on something nasty that they say, whether it be in or out of work. When it comes to my political ideology, I describe myself more as a conservative and less as a libertarian. When it comes to fiscal issues, I'm pretty libertarian, but as a whole, I wouldn't just call myself a libertarian. I do have more leanings in the conservative realm, and that's a whole nother discussion for another time. But when it comes to the free market, when it comes to businesses being able to hire and fire whoever they want, I'm very pro-limited government. I don't think the government should be involved in these kinds of decisions. When it comes to even Roseanne, I said on my social accounts that I do think it was good that she was fired, but I look at it this way. First of all, you knew what you were getting into, ABC, when you hired Roseanne in the first place to do this show. You knew exactly what she was, what she is. Again, she has said things in the past about those on the right, whether it be Christians, conservatives. She said very nasty things about them, and that didn't seem to deter ABC. Why? Well, because she was going after the right person, the right target. She wasn't going after someone on the left. I'm convinced, I'm not saying that she would have gotten away scot-free, but I am convinced that if Roseanne had said something like this about Clarence Thomas or Candace Owens, or, you just name, the Charles Payne from Fox News, or just whoever on the right that's black that, claims to be a conservative. If she would have said something like that about any of them, I have a hard time believing ABC would have fired her. I'm not saying that she would have, not gotten in any sort of trouble whatsoever, but fired at least that quickly, I doubt that. I could be wrong, but I have a hard time believing that. I really do. Especially if you go after the right target. And that's what it's all about with these people. It's not about principles. It's not about morals. It's about going after the right target. Because if you go after the wrong target, well, then you will upset too many people that will then tune out to your show, and that can cost you money. See, this is the problem that I have with cronyism and capitalism that is not based on morals. Because those who are just solely focused on money, they don't care about any morals whatsoever, well, they could take advantage of people. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I think the government should get involved here. I'm just saying, as a private citizen, looking at somebody else who's doing that, I don't like that at all. But that's what they want to do. Now, in the case of Samantha Bee, it's hard. It is hard to say whether or not I would fire her. First of all, I would never work there in the first place. So let's just get that out of the way, But let's say, me being the Christian conservative I am, somehow I wind up being the CEO and I'm the one calling the shots. I don't know how that would happen, but let's just say it did. Would I fire her? I would like to think no, because I want the free market to work. I want people to make up their mind. Do they want this content or don't they? And that's the thing. I want to separate myself, and allow other people to make their own decisions. But it's hard because these kinds of things are pretty detestable. But it goes back to something I've said before about the very idea of free speech. And this is the overall point that I want to make here. What is freedom? What is freedom of speech? Freedom doesn't mean anarchy. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that you can just do whatever you want and there are no consequences for it. There's a podcast that I like to listen to. It's a Star Wars podcast. They do it once a week. And they like to ask a question before each recording that they do, so they can discuss some of the answers. And the question for the Star Wars podcast for this coming week, it might actually be tonight, was, which do you prefer, freedom or order? And I got to thinking about that. It's like, that is a fascinating question, and fascinating way you worded that question. Because the way I look at it is, you can have both. You can have freedom and order. You can have a society that is based on Judeo-Christian principles and still allow others to live as they please, as long as they aren't infringing on somebody else's God-given rights. That's what the founders set up our Constitution to do. It's what our laws originally were based to do. While we're still a religious people, we aren't going to, discriminate on someone based purely on the way they think. As long as they're not trying to hurt you or take away your freedoms, that's fine. Live and let live. But at the same time, because people are, fallen, because people are sinful, there will be those who will try to use their beliefs on others and force them to comply. And that is when you need order. You have to have a system of laws. You have to have a system of government. Look, guys, the Articles of Confederation, the reason why those didn't work is because those were far too close to anarchy. Anarchy meaning lawlessness, chaos, division, mob rule, a mobocracy, all of these things. That is what anarchy is. That is what it leads to. Someone was trying to argue with me that anarchy doesn't mean disorder or chaos. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you might want to Google the definition of anarchy. That's maybe takes you 2 seconds and you'll figure out that you're wrong. But secondly, if you look at history, if you just open your eyes and your ears, you will see that anarchy, yes, does mean disunity, lawlessness, and chaos. That's what it means. That's what the word freaking means. But, again, the founders knew you have to have a system of government, but just enough to keep people's rights secure. That's why we were set up as a constitutional republic. Well, we do have representatives. We do have leaders. We do have those who are there to protect and defend our rights. But it doesn't mean that we live on majority rule. That's why we're not a democracy. I get so tired of people saying, we're a democracy, or this is not good for our democracy. We are not a democracy. A democracy is majority rule. That's what it is. Majority gets to decide. And if 51% say this is good, but 49% say this is bad, well, kind of sucks to be you. You're just going to have to go with it. That's not what our founders wanted. That's what they escaped from. So why do I bring this up? Because I don't want us to be engaged in mob rule when it comes to these kinds of decisions. I don't want people to be forced out of society, to be kicked to the curb because they said something that people don't like. The idea of freedom of speech, what that means is freedom of speech. It is the notion that if you say, you can say whatever you want to say, as long as you are not, infringing on somebody else, or you are ruining their life and they have no way of defending themselves. And the speech that is the speech that is the most worth protecting is that which is the hardest to defend. It's very easy for me to defend the speech of Ben Shapiro, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin, name the person on the right, Ravi Zacharias, a Christian, David Jeremiah, Lee Strobel, all these people. I can defend them, no problem. Say whatever they want to say because I already agree with them. But it gets harder when you have to defend the rights of people like Bill Maher, Samantha Bee, Roseanne, whoever, to say detestable things. Now, does that mean that they should not get in trouble? No, I'm not saying that. Again, it looks bad on the company, and they, as a company, the company also has a right to do what they feel should be done to protect their reputation. Now, the irony here is that they can fire Roseanne, they can boot her out, but they will hire someone like Keith Olbermann, who's going to, I guess, be working at ESPN. Was it the third or fourth time? He's gotten fired so many times, I lose track of where he used to work. But he's going to be a sports analyst again at ESPN, which is owned ultimately by Disney. They also own ABC, which is where Roseanne got fired from. And Keith Olbermann has had decades of history of saying awful, nasty, bigoted, racist things about Jews, about Christians, conservatives, anyone and everyone on the right or in the religious side, he will tear apart. So I guess it's not in violation of their principles to hire someone like Keith Olbermann, but it is if someone who is known for saying nasty things as well, but not quite as nasty as Keith Olbermann, says something on Twitter, not even at work, I guess that's terrible then. We got to fire her. The double standard is amazing. And it's not just on the left. It's also on the right. And what I mean by that is many people that I respect, actually made the right call on this one, saying that, what Roseanne said was disgusting. And some of them I thought were right to point out that the left is hypocritical too. But, unfortunately, some of these same people who are up in arms about what the left is doing have been defending every step of the way, or at least excusing and kind of turning a blind eye to, what Donald Trump has done. And I know, Blake, why are you going back to this? I'm so tired of hearing about this. Because it's true. It's true. You can't on the one hand say, what Samantha Bee said was just despicable. How could she dare call the daughter of the president the C word, or any person, any woman, the C word? But on the other hand, kind of, it's just locker room talk on Donald Trump. Well, you grab women by the hoo-ha, it's just locker room talk. It's fine. We'll go ahead and vote for him because we can't have Hillary. We can't have her. I'm so tired of the excuses that people make, and that is one of my pet peeves. I'll tell you, there are a few things that irk me especially, and one of them is when people make excuses for their own bad behavior. I understand. I've done it. You've done it. Everybody's done it. But we have got to try to do better. And when people don't try to do better and they just completely dismiss the bad stuff that they've done, it really gets under my skin. And that's what we're doing. We're excusing the bad things that someone on supposedly our side is doing because, well, the ends justify the means. We have to get Trump. We can't get Hillary. But on the other hand, well, Samantha Bee, she should be fired because she said something really nasty like that. Or, well, it's time we boycott Bill Maher's show. It's time we boycott Marvel. It's time we have to boycott Star Wars. Can't go watch these movies because they put in nasty things like that. We don't watch them. But hey, we're going to see all these other movies that have nasty things in them. But at least they're not attacking conservatives or Christians. It's just, doesn't it give you a headache? I mean, seriously, does it not give you a headache? All the excuses, all the dismissals you have to make, all the hoops you have to jump, all the twists and turns you have to go through to get to where you want to go. Doesn't it get you dizzy? How do you sleep at night? I don't understand it. Can we not be consistent here? Can we at least try to be consistent? I'm saying you have to be perfect. You don't have to be beaten over the head if you make a mistake, but can you at least try? Well, no, we can't, because we have a goal, we have an objective, and we have to reach that objective. And if someone else does the same thing, well, sometimes you just have to get rid of them to get to your ends. Well, that's not who we are. That's not a moral system. That's not how a people progresses. That's not how we get better. Because we're basing that off of the flesh. We're basing that off of our own human wants and desires. We're not basing that on anything eternal, anything higher than ourselves. I mean, look, guys, I'm in this fight too. I understand struggling with trying to be consistent. And I understand how hard it is to, you see the left, you see how awful and nasty they are. And don't get me wrong, they are nasty. They are very nasty. And I still think they're nastier than many on the right because, quite frankly, I think liberalism is, at its core, steeped in Satanism. It's sadistic. If you really go to the core of what liberalism really is, it's the absence of God. It's the propping up of human will, human desire over the supernatural, over anything higher than oneself. And that comes from Satan. I'm just saying it. That's where it comes from. And it's really easy to see that and to look at that and say, these people are so disgusting. And then, if someone on the right, if someone like Donald Trump goes out and just uses their own tactics, their own nastiness, their own vitriol against them, it's easy to look at that and be like, yeah, how does it feel to get your own medicine? Well, what's going to happen in just a short period of time? The left is going to see that, and because of their own hypocrisy, because of their own short-sightedness, they're going to do the same thing to us. And when we get riled up, they're going to go, yeah, how does that feel? And it's just going to go back and forth until there is no way we can unite. That's part of the reason. That's part of the reason why we're so divided. Because of all these excuses and our addiction, our obsession with rage and anger. I mean, look, I like to use Star Wars references from time to time, and I do think this is one of the best quotes from the franchise. Fear is the path to darkness. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Yes, I understand it was said in a Star Wars movie, but if you just look at that quote as a whole, there's a lot of truth there. I mean, look at the world we're living in. Fear leads to anger. What are people afraid of? They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of their own flaws. They're afraid of admitting their failures. They're afraid of change, whatever it may be. And they have to protect their territory. They have to protect their own bubble. They can't allow anyone to get inside, so they get angry. They get really angry, and they respond with anger. And if they keep responding with that anger, it festers and boils up and becomes an outright hatred. And you just keep on piling on and piling on and piling on, and that hatred causes people to suffer. Causes people to lose their jobs, their friendships, their connections with their family, their livelihood even. It's what this all comes down to. And we've got to return to those basic first principles that aren't just human principles, but are godly principles of nature's God and nature's law. We've got to return to those if we want any hope of redemption. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
So, a word to the wise for any of you out there who are listening who are about the same age as me. Just because you're in your 20s does not mean that you are immune to back pain and, hurting yourself. A truth that I learned the hard way over the weekend. I'm a lot better now, but yesterday during church I helped move a ladder. And I was told in advance you might want to get 2 or 3 people to help you. And I was like, well, I'd helped move that ladder before. We had to move it to a different part of the building. So I was like, well, I'll just get one person. It should be okay. And it was fine for most of the way. And then when I bent down to set the ladder down so we could, move some stuff out of the way in the other part of the building to get it around, that's when the pain really shot up. And I realized, wow. So that's what that feels like. Because I'd never pulled a muscle before, and that's all it was. I didn't break anything. It was just I really pulled a muscle hardcore, and the rest of the day I was resting. So thankfully, I feel a lot better now. So still a little tense on the side, because that's where I got hurt. Was not fully on the back, but it was on the side part, and it's a little sensitive, but nowhere near as painful as it was when I first got it. So there is that, which kind of ruined my day, honestly, in a way, because I'd already planned to hang out with my girlfriend, but it's okay. It's quite all right. And in hindsight, I'm glad I rested. So anyway, it's just a word of advice to anyone out there. No matter what you're doing, take care of yourself, please. Because if it doesn't hurt you now, it will kill you later. So, let's go to some good news. I am pretty excited about this. The job numbers are very, very good for the United States. Numbers that we haven't seen in decades, quite frankly. The job numbers just came out for the month of May, and the unemployment is now at 3.8%, which we have not seen in almost 20 years. It was around the same number, and that was the last. Before that, it was about the same amount too. And that was like in 1969, so it's been about 50 years since it's been, that consistently good. So that's really good. 223,000 jobs created in the month of May. And According to CNBC, this includes part-time workers who want a full-time job and people who want to work but have given up looking and aren't in the official count of the labor force. Because, that was the problem during the Obama administration. They would boast these numbers, and they weren't terrible, I guess, but they weren't that great either. But they also didn't take into account the people who had given up looking for work. Well, this count, according to CNBC, includes those people who had given up but had also been able to find jobs now. They are included in this labor force count. So that's very good news for the country. Politically speaking, that's not very good news for the Democrats, because typically what happens is the people who are out of work, the people who are really struggling, tend to vote for the opposing party rather than the incumbent. Well, because of President Trump and the Republicans, they're now getting help, and they're now getting jobs. So why wouldn't you keep voting for the same people who got you those jobs, right? And that's how some people vote, quite honestly. They don't. Some people don't vote based on actual policy. They vote based on what are you giving me? Are you actually getting me work? Am I actually getting jobs? Am I getting tax cuts? Am I getting more of my own money back? If I'm getting those things, I don't really care about the other stuff, and I'll still vote for you. I wish it was more than that. I wish it was deeper than that. I wish people thought more critically about these things and realized what gives you better and more positive numbers like this. And it's not just about jobs, but that is important. It is really important. So, good news for the Republicans, bad news for the Democrats, because not just anyone is getting better numbers. African Americans, their unemployment rate has dropped historically low to 5.9%, a nearly 1 whole percentage point drop from April's 6.6%. And as NPR noted, NPR, by the way, not necessarily the go-to place for conservative viewpoints, but even they noted that the unemployment rate for African Americans has never been smaller. So these are the kinds of groups that Democrats like to cater to, but what are they going to... What's their message going to be? What have the Democrats done except for oppose Donald Trump every step of the way, except for try to get him impeached every step of the way? The Democrats have opposed the Republicans on things that, quite frankly, the Democrats would love. The omnibus spending package. They weren't a huge fan of that. These tariffs, some of the things that Donald Trump has done that is not conservative at all. The Democrats have opposed some of them because it's Donald Trump, and they hate him so much. They don't care if he would give them what they want. They hate him. They hate him so much. Their hatred for him is so deeper than their own agenda. And that's why I do tend to agree with the notion that the Democrats have overplayed their hand. Because now they're becoming more vicious. Instead of focusing on their agenda, they're getting blindsided by personalities in different ways, but in still some of the same ways that Republicans have become blindsided by their partisan politics, voting for personality over principle. Now, luckily for us, we're getting a little bit of good news, and good news that I think will really help us in the long run, potentially. But some of these things they seem more short term. So we'll see. But to go with the good news, another thing that I really wanted to talk about, I think is one of the best things that any president has done in a long time. And this is the Right to Try bill that the president signed last week. This bill now permits terminally ill patients to gain access to experimental medical drugs not yet approved by the Food and Drug Administration. It was staunchly supported by Trump and the vice president, along with congressional Republicans. In March of 2015, Pence, then governor of Indiana, signed a similar bill into law for his state. Indiana's law permitted physicians in the state to prescribe a drug that had passed the first phase of the FDA's three-phase clinical trial process. The 3 stages work like this. Phase 1, trials are implemented on between 20 to 80 healthy patients to determine their safety and what is a safe dose. Phase 2 trials involve between 100 and 300 people who could gain from the drug therapy. And Phase 3 trials involve the testing of hundreds and sometimes thousands of patients who would benefit. As he signed the bill, Trump stated quote, thousands of terminally ill Americans will finally have hope and the fighting chance, and I think it's going to be better than a fighting chance, that they will be cured. They will be helped and be able to be with their families for a long time, or maybe just for a longer time. Now, of course, Democrats and public health groups have opposed the bill because they're, quite frankly, an anti-life party. They hate life. Unless it's people that they know for sure are going to vote for them, they will oppose anything that protects the sanctity of human life. And so they oppose this. Representative Frank Pallone Jr. said the FDA oversight of access to experimental treatments exists for a reason. It protects patients from potential snake oil salesmen or from experimental treatments that might do more harm than good. Now, this is the problem for me. The double standard. The Democrats claim to care about life. They claim to care about, well, we just can't have patients who, would take something that could kill them. Well, this is why it's for terminally ill patients. They're going to die anyway. If you do nothing, they will die. So, and it's left to them. It's their choice. You call yourself the party of pro-choice, yet you seem to be opposing the choice of the patient to do something to save their own life, which is very ironic because that seems to be one of the key aspects of why the Democrats support abortion. Well, you've got to protect the life of the mother, right? The woman's right comes first. Well, what about everyone's life? What about a man's life, a woman's life? What if it's a woman's life? And what if they need some sort of drug to keep them alive? Are you going to oppose that? Well, why would you oppose her choice? It's a complete double standard. And it's quite telling, I think, of the evil nature of the Democrat Party. And make no mistake, I think they are an evil party. That doesn't mean I think everyone in the party is, directly evil, but they are at least non-directly contributing to many of these destructive policies. So I think this bill is extremely important. It really is. I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense. Yes, there are risks. I obviously agree with that. But if you're going to die anyway, and there could be something that they have that they're working on that could work, why not give it a shot? Even if it doesn't keep you alive for a long time, if it could prolong your life for a little bit longer, if the patient wants that, why deny it to him? And that's, to me, I think that's common sense. And I think the president should be applauded for this. This is something that he and the vice president have been advocates for a long time. Now, as good as those two things are, really bad news for the economy in the future could be what the president is doing with tariffs. So on the heels of, the beginning stages of this economic victory, the president could be winding up turning it around by hurting the economy with tariffs. He's just implemented these tariffs against the Europeans, the Canadians, the Mexicans, saying that we are getting hurt by trade, and trade is a zero-sum game. Well, no, it's not a zero-sum game. I mean, this has been my problem with Trump since the beginning. This is one of the few things that he has not flip-flopped on. He has stayed true to for many years. These tariffs are a tax on the American consumer. Whenever you tax something, whenever you hit someone's economy hard and cause their prices to go up, they are going to attack back. And the price that you would pay for steel, anything that has steel in it or aluminum, anything like that at all, it's going to go up. You want to get a new car? Well, prepare to pay for more prices because there's steel involved in many of these cars, and that will cause the price to go up. The price that you pay at the grocery store could go up. It could, I mean, it's just these tariffs are really bad for the economy, and they've shown throughout history to be really bad for the economy. And originally, I was hopeful, recently actually, that this was more of a negotiating tactic, that the president was just using this to negotiate to get a better deal, but he wasn't actually going to implement the tariffs. Well, he already did. So we will see the effects of that, and as with past presidents, Bush did the same thing. We will see the economy hurt because of this. Will it hurt enough to cost the Republicans votes? I don't know. But they will certainly spin it as, the Republicans will spin it as being a good thing because we've got to be pro-American. Well, it's hard to be pro-American when you're hurting the American worker and you're hurting the American consumer. But maybe that's just me. All right, we're going to take a break, come back on the Blake Johnson program. Thanks for staying with us. We'll be right back in just a moment. So did you guys see, I don't know if you saw the numbers that came in over the weekend of CNN. The ratings for that network are just abysmal. Like, it was embarrassing just to read it for myself. But they made, the ratings came out, I can't remember the name of the group, that's like the Nielsen something or other, but it's a big name ratings group that does it. And for the month of May, during prime time, CNN averaged about 800,000 viewers a night. And during the day, they'd reach about 600,000 viewers. That is awful. In contrast, MSNBC, during prime time, averages about, it's like 1.6 million or so a night. And Fox averages, it's about, it's over 2 million. It's like 2.6 or so million a night. So Fox is beating all of them, of course, but still, that is really bad, really bad. And some of these people are like, oh, CNN is just so great. No, I don't think the people agree with you. So I thought that was interesting. In the last couple minutes I have left of the show, I know you're waiting on bated breath to hear my review of the Solo Star Wars movie. I'm saddened by the fact that it's made so little money. I mean, you look at how much it's made. It's already been out 2 weeks. So first week it made like a grand total of 108 million. I don't know if that's both domestic and abroad, or if that's just domestically, but it's done terrible compared to other Star Wars movies. And over the weekend it made like 29 million. And when you look at that, you think it's a really bad movie. Well, it's actually a very good movie. I went and saw it, and I loved it, honestly. So far, I think the standalone movies, Rogue One and the Solo movie, are far better than The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I mean, they're enjoyable to watch, but when you talk about a story and when you talk about not ruining great characters, I think Solo and Rogue One do a great job of that. I was impressed with the guy who plays Han Solo. I forget his last name, but the Alden guy who plays him. There's a surprise at the end. I won't spoil it, but it's very, very good. But I think this has to do with the fact that Disney is putting their own political correctness in it. I mean, they just announced that Lando Calrissian is an LGBT character. They want to make him a pansexual character, and there's even a hint at that in the Solo movie. It's just, I think that's what's taking the ratings down. It's not the fact that they're coming out 6 months out of each other, because Marvel does the same thing and they make billions. So hopefully they get their act together. But that's going to do it for the Blake Johnson program. Maybe we'll spend some more time on it next week. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend and rest of your week. God bless.